Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's informative session. I'm Aretha Lafayette, Program Manager for Research Education Program Development and Outreach in the Office of Research and Innovation. I will serve as the session MC for today's discussion. In this webinar, Hanover will discuss definitions of team science, the rationale for using team science in grant projects, and critical factors for driving team science success. The webinar will also cover best practices for working with collaborative teams on grant projects and how to address common pitfalls encountered when working collaboratively on grant proposals. Here to present once again is Paul Tuttle. Paul began his career in research administration in 2001 as a funding opportunities specialist. Since then, he has focused on pre-award and proposal development, managing those functions at 3 UNC system institutions. Later, at a for-profit grant writing company, he hired and supervised what became a team of 16 grant consultants serving nearly 500 United States clients in 4 sectors: higher education, K-12, nonprofits, and healthcare providers. After returning to North Carolina A&T State University, the nation's largest HBCU, to serve as the Director of Proposal Development from February 2015 to January 2022, he has returned to Hanover Research as a grants consultant. Paul holds a Master's of Arts in English with a concentration in rhetoric and composition. His persuasive writing background has enabled him to assist faculty researchers and senior university administrators in securing over $175 million in sponsored program and research awards over the last 2 decades. He has participated in the National Council of University Research Administrators, (NCURA), since 2001, the Society of Research Administrations International, SRAI, since 2003, and the National Organization of Research Development Professionals since 2012. He was the 2018-2019 president of SRAI's North Carolina chapter and was a 2018 through 2022 member of NORDP's Board of Directors. He continues to be an invited presenter at statewide, regional, national, and international conferences in research administration and research development. Paul, such amazing things you've done. Thank you for joining us today. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Aretha. And now I'd like to welcome you all to our presentation today on team science best practices. Our agenda and learning objectives are shown here. Basically, we're going to be talking about emerging characteristics of most funded research, which of course includes team science and collaboration. Some understanding and some discussion of why to collaborate, how to find good collaborators, and challenges and keys to successful collaborations. Learning objectives include gaining an understanding of the emerging characteristics of funded research, understanding when and why to collaborate, and of course when not to, gathering ideas for how to find collaborators, and identifying what makes collaborations strong and long-lasting. So let's talk about these emerging characteristics of funded research. 5 of them I'm going to talk about here. All of them do in fact relate to team science. First, proposing and based on state-of-the-art research or leading-edge ideas. Second, including some demonstration of previous experience and or some understanding of how preliminary data guides the insights or the investigations. Third, not written alone. Obviously, that's collaboration. Fourth, based on multiple submissions. The reality of it is that that we have often to pick ourselves up from a decline and try again, get back on the horse and ride. Fifth, incorporating multidisciplinary or collaborative work. Again, quite clearly and explicitly related to the theme of the day, team science. So let's talk about those 5 characteristics in a little bit more detail. First, the funded research these days typically responds to clear and urgent need in the field, which means that it is not only significant and important what you're talking about, but it needs to be done now. That's the urgent part of it. Typically, the state-of-the-art research is published in higher tier journals, and it's based on well-known publications in those same higher tier journals, not only your own, but others. So it's showing that you understand the context of your wonderful and brilliant ideas that are driving state-of-the-art research. But your reviewers are also looking for your experience. Can you manage a grant? This is a very practical question. It's a project, start and end dates, activities, objectives, goals, anticipated results, different kinds of management plan, dissemination plan. How are you going to plow the ideas back into the state-of-the-art research that's already out there? How you're going to enrich the actual knowledge base of the field or the connection among different fields that you're working in? Have you published on the subject you're proposing to study? And of course, if your reviewers are looking for how competitive your ideas are, they're also going to ask, what are your available resources? How will you be able to do this work? And how will you present it clearly? And of course, some understanding of, especially if you are attempting to collaborate, some understanding of your history of collaboration, how well you have worked with others in the past. Most funded research also includes some previous experience or preliminary data. Yes, second bullet point, even for some opportunities that state that it's not needed, and even for small grants, and even some at the beginnings of the careers, beginnings of people's careers will need some hint that there is something driving this, some preliminary investigation that is driving this intellectual curiosity that you're showing in the proposal. So you have to remember, last bullet point here, we're all standing on the shoulders of other people in the field who came before us. And so we need to establish ourselves in the field as one of those future giants that others will depend on. So you need to be strategic about what you're looking for and how you're going about investigating those research questions and or those ideas, so that you understand that, yes, in fact, you do have a clear sense that this kind of approach, these methods, this line of investigation will yield useful data, useful results, and worthwhile findings. To do that, think about your own qualifications and the qualifications of your team and the preliminary data that you all have amassed together. So what are your position, affiliations, and publication record? Think about your background, your expertise, your preliminary work. What's your experience with the proposed topic and methods? What's your experience with grant funding in general? What's your experience with training the next generation? All of those kinds of questions you would need to ask yourself and team members, politely, tactfully, of course, to gauge how prepared you all are to collaborate together and to create highly competitive, collaborative proposals. Of course, it's not written alone. This is most explicitly collaborative here. You would need to solicit feedback from others. You are in a context that you did not build, and you have learned the language of the discipline, learned the culture of the discipline, learned the culture of the grant makers, the funders as well. So you would want to make a habit of gathering program officer feedback before each submission, just making sure that your ideas do in fact fit do in fact align well enough for the program officer to encourage you or to invite you to, yes, please submit a proposal on this topic with this approach that you've shared with me. You would want to give yourself enough time to avoid rushing the thinking, to avoid putting it out there before the idea is really ready for prime time. And you would want to make sure that you find ways to brainstorm ideas together. This can be sometimes difficult, so some advice: bounce ideas off of each other. Instead of just talking in a vacuum and having those ideas just fly away, make sure that you record somehow. In an in-person meeting, you would want a recording device maybe, or somebody who agrees to take notes to be a scribe. In a Zoom or Teams meeting, you can click the little button called record, and or you can, if you're using the kind that has the ability to transcribe, then you can actually turn on the transcription tool. You can also dictate into your smartphone's voice memo function to take a note, and Siri or Alexa or whomever will be able to take a note for you. The reason is that we all came to language first verbally, second with a pen or pencil and paper, only third with a keyboard and a screen. So if you have found that there's too much of a barrier with that keyboard and a screen, and it takes too much time and cramps your hand when you try to write on a piece of paper, go ahead and say the words out loud and make sure that they are recorded so those wonderful ideas are not just, again, flying into the ether. So to make sure that you can come back and say, let's pick up on that. At minute number 47, somebody said a wonderful thing in our group meeting, and I want to follow up on that now with our discussion. I want to say a little bit more, want to brainstorm a little bit more on this, because it seems like a really promising line of investigation. And you all can talk about that as a group, recording it again and capture all those wonderful ideas. Then you're able to select from those wonderful ideas and even copy and paste from the transcription into a draft of your a first draft of your proposal. To leverage the collective brain power of your team, you're going to want to, second main bullet point, use a divide and conquer method. You're going to want to make assignments to make sure that different people write different pieces of the whole. Now, this means also that different people have different writing styles and different tones, and quite often it's easy to tell that different people wrote different things. So you'll have to include at the end or near the end of the entire proposal development process, you'll have to include a stage where one person makes it sound as though one person wrote it. So there needs to be that revision and editing piece near the end for consistency of tone, style, and voice across the entire proposal. But at the beginning, you can afford to have everyone write different pieces to share the labor, and then remember that at the end you'll have to have somebody massage those statements for tone, style, and voice, similarity, consistency of tone, style, and voice, to make sure it sounds as though you have one voice coming from the team. And for that reason, sometimes people use, last bullet point on this slide, sometimes people use Google Docs, or sometimes people use SharePoint, or sometimes people use something like that to help with collaborative writing, so that you can each inject at different points, you can each inject your own ideas and your own opinions and your own take on the topic and the approach and the methodology and all those other components of a well-written, well-conceived, competitive proposal. So these are ideas to use moving forward. Of course, yes, the real truth is that the vast majority of proposals are not funded on the first submission. So plan for that resubmission, get ready for it, get ready for rejection. It can be a mental hurdle, so it can be helpful to have a long-term plan. And among those plans might be to decide what the next possible funding target is and think about how to tailor the current version to that next funding topic as you're thinking about the current funding target. You might also think about separating your relatively large idea into modular components so that you can say, okay, maybe the US Department of Agriculture will fund this component. Maybe the National Science Foundation will fund this second component. Maybe NASA will fund this third component. And maybe the Department of Defense, a Department of Defense agency, will fund this fourth component. So that you are, yes, individually responsible to each one of those funding agencies for each component, but that when the funding comes back to you, you perceive it as an entire program of research that all interacts in such a way that the sum is greater than just the effect and impact is greater than merely the sum of the parts. You would need to practice. You know that old joke from the 1950s, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. It's not a direction. It's having to do something over and over and over until, last bullet point on the page, it becomes better and easier with practice. So next to last bullet point on the page, consider becoming a reviewer for a federal agency or another funder supporting research in your field. You can become a reviewer even before you have obtained your first funded grant, because your PhD means that you have a specialty. You have expertise that no one else has because your dissertation was different from anyone else's. And your specialized expertise is quite often valuable because it is contextualized within a discipline, within a field, but it is also a very narrow and a very deep dive that you performed to earn your PhD and to serve as the very first research investigation of your career. And you might as well use it as expertise in becoming a reviewer for one or more of your optimal funders. But to go back to the practice point, create working groups. Go ahead and share your writing as often as possible. Make sure that these individuals you're sharing with provide constructive critiques. Make sure that you provide constructive critiques to them. We don't need to hear, when we're talking about ideas and how they fit together, we don't need to hear about apostrophes missing or commas being improperly applied or something like that. We don't need to hear that the format is off. We don't need to hear any of those things. What we need to talk about are the ideas and how they can be developed and grown and how they can be interconnected with each other so that they together move forward in creating a highly competitive, collaboratively written proposal. Fifth of the 5 characteristics of funded research these days is that it tends to incorporate multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, and or collaborative work. So first point is a big one. Most state-of-the-art or leading-edge work cannot be done alone. These large, intransigent problems that have stuck with us for decades or centuries that we don't know how to answer yet, we have to have perspectives from multiple disciplines in order to address the problem or address the gap in knowledge appropriately. It's just like the mathematical concept of the limit. You're always approaching that. We don't, in some cases, ever expect to actually get there, but we are expecting to get closer and closer and closer toward that ideal utopia of fully understanding that concept, fully understanding that gap, fully filling that gap in knowledge to enrich the knowledge base of the field or to enrich the knowledge base supporting the intersection of multiple disciplines. You also might want to remember, depending on what stage of your career you're in, you might want to remember that many successful principal investigators have begun as co-investigators on other people's projects. And then there's a question of how to branch out and scale up in terms of your own professional development over time, based on what you learn and how you grow with the PI serving as a mentor for you over multiple collaborative projects. Conversely, you also have to remember, don't jump in too quickly and say yes too often, because you could become overstretched very, very early in your career, especially if you're at an institution that has or in a discipline that has a relatively high teaching load compared to others. So you would want to make sure that you are carefully thinking about if and when you wish to say yes to an invitation to join a team, you would have to think carefully about how well does this help me? Does this actually have a win-win for me? Is this actually going to help me over the long term and give me optimum results in terms of my professional development and in terms of alignment with my own career goals and my own professional development trajectory or research trajectory. So the question becomes, how well does this benefit me? And people know this. It does not sound asinine to say to someone, if I could, I need to think about this for a few days to make sure that it actually fits with my own individual career goals. It does not sound asinine at all to do that. People understand that this is a natural thing to do, and it is not off-putting at all. In fact, saying yes too quickly and then having to back out later is sometimes worse. So make sure that you think about the opportunities. Make sure that you consider the collaborative work carefully so that you can benefit from it and so that the team can as well. So in doing this, you would need to learn how to speak to audiences from various fields, the first main bullet point. The second main bullet point, you need to learn how to listen to speakers from various fields, which means that in some cases, you're going to be simplifying things or using lay language rather than technical expertise language from your field in order to discuss how your ideas and your expertise and your background helps the team. So in addressing these problems that are larger than one discipline can solve, you would want to strive for understanding and you would want to identify common ground. If someone uses too much jargon, you would want to ask questions. What do you actually mean by that word or that term that you're using right now? What do you mean by that in this context? I understand what it means as a layperson, but what do you mean in this context? What are the resonances that I'm supposed to understand as part of the connotations, the broader connotations of this term that you've shared with us? And also, when you speak with other people and they have a blank stare, you would need to explain to them, I get it. This is how we use it in this term or this concept in our field. This is what we mean by this. So in doing that, you would be, third bullet point from the top, helping others understand the value of your perspective, including your topic and methods. So you would need to make sure that you are translating for others and that you're asking others to translate for you so that you can have that understanding and common ground in the last bullet point here on the slide. So why collaborate? Well, there are different kinds of collaboration. Unidisciplinary within a field, multidisciplinary between fields, but with boundaries intact, interdisciplinary collaboration across field boundaries, usually creating something that is larger than merely the combination of fields, and transdisciplinary collaboration that integrates fields and brings something new. Nanobiotechnology is one example that I might say, that I might bring to you to explain what transdisciplinary might be, just as an example. Definitions vary. National Science Foundation has called things convergence research for quite some time, where ideas and information and data converge upon a problem area or a gap, a very large gap that requires multiple perspectives, multiple disciplines in order to answer the research questions within that relatively large gap. So a question for you to think about at this point in your career, at this point in considering performing collaborative research. What can collaboration mean for you in your specific context? And yes, everyone loves the idea of collaboration. It's not only trendy, but it's also useful and worthwhile. And as we said before, there are certain kinds of questions that can only be answered via collaboration. So NSF encourages opening new research vistas through collaboration. NIH says collaboration is proving to move science forward in important ways. Why collaborate? It's also because it's the best way to do what you want to do. The skills and backgrounds of those different diverse members of the team enable you to learn from each other. You're working toward the same goals. You're from multiple perspectives, yes, but you're working toward the same goals, and you are sure that this combination of perspectives, skills, backgrounds, expertise is worthwhile in answering this particular kind of research question or set of research questions. Not so good reasons to collaborate might include it's what your target funder wants. Okay, that's an external stimulus. Or the team members are impressive, or someone asked me and I said yes. Those are not so good as the main point here at the bottom of the screen, which is that collaborations should serve the work. You should have a valid, justifiable reason to have this particular collaboration and these particular people who have these particular expertise areas and backgrounds, skills, working toward the same goals should serve the work. How to collaborate? Well, it's about thoughtfulness and communication. It's about making sure that you understand how the structure of your collaboration is working toward those common goals. The roles and responsibilities of each individual person collaborating should be well defined, and there should be actual, yes, implementation and communication plans. You all should sit down together and write it out. We've heard of gentlemen's agreements before, I'm sure. Well, what happens when people no longer act like gentlemen? Well, it's a problem. There are potential conflicts and challenges. There are egos that get in the way. There are people who decide to take their toys and go and play elsewhere because they have become offended by something. Yes, adults do act like that, as I'm sure you know. So we recommend developing formal structures and agreements to say if you are committed to this, please show how you are committed, and let's sign here, please. And if through no fault of everyone at the table, if it's not working out, then there should be an amicable or friendly way to separate without pointing fingers and making all sorts of crazy claims about what went wrong. Quite often, it's not a what went wrong, it's our collaboration did not work because the factors involved did not work together well. Not the people, although sometimes it's the people as well. But sometimes it's just the ideas did not work together. The ideas themselves did not play together well. So in planning your collaborations, keep the plans thoughtful and keep communicating openly and clearly, and remember that everyone around the table is there for a reason. Everyone has a role or responsibility in the project, on the team, moving forward, and make sure they understand why they're there and keep calling on them for their expertise and experience and background. When to collaborate? Well, when you're ready, and as we said before, when the work demands it. So if it advances your long-term goals, if it fits into the context of your overall work, if it develops key relationships, if it contributes to the field, it's a great idea to collaborate. But be careful, as we said before, about overcommitment or scattered effort or a divided clarity of purpose. Be careful about those things which could take away from that single feeling of togetherness. We are sitting around the table in order to do this together. So you always want to make sure you know what you're getting into, and that you remind yourself over time as you're working together. You remind yourself over time, this is why I'm here. This is why we are here. This is what we are trying to do. And any good facilitator of a collaborative group, which may or may not be the principal investigator, any good facilitator will remind everyone at key points. This is why we're here. This is what we're trying to do together. This is where we've come from our first meeting, and this is where we're going. Pitfalls, of course, do happen. People are people. Things fail. Things mess up. Things blow up. Huge, enormous train crashes happen. And sometimes they are the result of too hasty arrangements or undefined collaborations or poorly structured or poorly considered or even conflicting collaborations purely for the sake of funding, for following the money. No, do not do that. Instead, follow the ideas and follow the rational justification for working together. Because, last point on the page, the wrong kinds of collaborations can cause significant damage to professional relationships, to research relationships, to even careers. And you would want to make very sure that that you avoid those pitfalls if at all possible. If someone else blows up at the table, try hard to move out of the way so none of it gets on you. And that means that you need to understand, and if necessary, be the adult in the room and say, excuse me, but this is not working, and I'm seeing an ugly side to this collaboration, and I am out. Forgive me, but I'm out. And if that has to happen, you need to explain to people exactly what your reasoning is, and be firm and stick with it, and find another collaboration that serves you and other well-meaning people and the field better. So let's talk about finding good collaborators. You would want to be these three words at the top: purposeful, strategic, and methodical. I would also add intentional and deliberate, because just simply saying, hey, will you marry me? No, we don't do that. You want to date? No, most of us don't do that. We think about it for a while, and we've met someone, and they strike sparks off of us in some interesting way, and we want to have some sort of relationship with them. It's the same in the professional world: deliberate and intentional. So, number one, decide what you need in a collaborator, why you need it, and then search for it, including within and at nearby institutions, or perhaps not nearby. We have learned during COVID that Zoom and Teams are quite good for collaborative tools. See who has been successful in obtaining funding. Quite often, track record is important to funders when you're looking at large, especially center scale and collaborative working groups. Review the literature, network at conferences, and yes, serve as a reviewer. Okay, let's talk about 6, network at conferences. Okay, many of us in different fields, especially scientific and technological fields, many of us were very happy to be by ourselves think great thoughts by ourselves, and dive very deep during a master's and or PhD program by ourselves into a very, very narrowly defined but very intellectually enriching part of our field. Right? We were very interested in doing it by ourselves. Well, guess what? In collaboration with others, we have to gather together and we have to strike sparks off of each other intellectually. So we need to learn to stick out our hand and say, hello, my name is, I'm from such and such institution. I work in this way, and this is my typical MO for my research. What do you do? How does this happen? And I need to tell you a very, very brief story. At a small institution, we had a day of grant writers coming in, and we had a lunch in the middle of the day. I arranged this and coordinated this day of these consultants, these grant writing consultants coming in. I deliberately allowed, well, first I seated people next to other people who I thought would be interesting to strike sparks off of. And then at lunchtime, I deliberately allowed the time to go and go and go. And people were saying, Paul, when are you going to start the next speaking? I said, it's okay. Just talk amongst yourselves, introduce yourselves. It's okay. Out of those 30 minutes of people talking amongst ourselves, 150 people created 20 new proposals because we had sat them together and we had allowed the conversation to happen, and we had given them a forum where they could network with each other. So think about that. Think about ways in which you, without the machinations of a research staff member, without those machinations, that you can reach out your hand and introduce yourself to someone else and network and find out what they do and find out whether what they do is similar to or complementary to what it is that you do, so that you can in fact work with them. So this is a collaboration and team science field guide from the National Cancer Institute, distinction between team science and collaboration. I don't have so much of this, but I think it's useful for some people, so I included it on the slide. So in terms of collaboration, on the left-hand column, while yes, it's similar to the idea of that team science integrated research team, each team member has a specific expertise to address the research problem. They bring that to the table. In most collaborations, according to this collaboration and team science field guide, there's going away to work on separate parts of the problem and then integrating when you meet again, versus with team science, where you are a team, you have decided to become a team, you meet regularly to discuss team goals, objectives, and plan a course. Now, in my opinion, you can do either or both if you call yourself collaborators or people using team science. But this is a distinction that's being made by this collaboration and team science field guide from the National Cancer Institute. So I think that's useful to think about, to consider while you're considering whether to be a collaborator, whether to immerse yourself in a team science kind of outlook. Again, in collaboration, the data sharing, the brainstorming might be limited or might be frequent, depending. Again, it's a lot of going away and doing your own thing and bringing it back to the table later. In the integrated research team, according to this, there is the team science part. The leadership responsibilities are shared. You've all got some stake, some skin in the game, as they used to say, in terms of moving the entire team forward. So depending on how you think about it, either one of these approaches can be useful to you when thinking about moving forward, either in terms of collaborative aspects of discussing and working together, or in a more fully integrated team science kind of approach. So from the science of team science, ideal teams encourage risk-taking. They foster collaboration and networking. This is not a crown, this graphic on the screen. This is a group of 3 people sitting around a table. So small teams tend to be better than large teams, according to the science of team science, because it makes everyone accountable. It heightens innovation. It makes sure that you cannot sit there quiet. You have to join in. You have to contribute as part of a small team. So in terms of outreach and networking, you would want to meet with people from different fields. You'll want to discuss, hello, my name is, this is what I'm doing, this is what's going on, this is my typical MO in terms of my research approach. And then after that discussion, work to form a concept for a collaborative project. This is why we're all here together. I or others or all of us are here to join this group. Yes, that's language very close to the holy matrimony thing, but the whole point is that you deliberately, intentionally, and explicitly say, this is why we're here. We're here to work together. We're here to think about topics on the right-hand column. We're here to think about complementary disciplinary ideas. We're here to think about how much funding is needed to address these topics from the perspectives of these disciplines moving forward in terms of multiple projects. So some guiding questions. What's your rationale? Are you ready to collaborate? How will your team function? Do you have technology and resources to make it happen? How will you communicate and coordinate? Do you have an actual plan? And remember, we recommend to write it down. How will the team leadership, management, and administration look? How formal will it be? Well, you can sign a piece of paper. You can say this is under the auspices of this office at our university, whatever. How will you resolve conflict? Where does the buck stop? How will you evaluate your collaboration over time? How will you know that it has been successful? So these are some guiding questions. And again, remember that in creating a quote working group, you need to be accountable to someone. And that someone may be outside your group. It may be the vice president for research. It may be the associate provost for research, maybe the provost or the president. But come forward knowing that you are all accountable to each other and then accountable to someone else as well. You are proving that you, in fact, do have a reason to be together, to work together, and to move forward together. What determines the success of team science? Well, of course, funding trends, and yet also just within the team itself, a common vision, a common theme, and right-hand column, sharing ideas, sharing leadership responsibilities, and collaborative skills and experiences. And remember that institutional infrastructure can help. We now have, everyone has a Zoom account, everyone has a Teams account, but before COVID, we did not. So we would have needed to ask for support in making some of these working groups happen from different IT folks at our institutions. It still may be at some institutions, maybe yours, maybe others, it still may be at some institutions that that you do need further IT support for specific kinds of software that help you to automatically transcribe your meetings, for example, if you do not have that yet available, or if your potential partner at another institution does not yet have that available. It may be that you'll need to share a platform that will be the responsibility of your institution or another institution. And you'll need to remember that there are interpersonal dynamics among team members that need to be thought through in terms of how to be successful. For instance, making sure that everyone at the table has a voice, making sure that everyone at the table speaks during every meeting at least once, making sure that everyone knows that whatever is being said is written down or recorded in some way, so that you are, in fact, yes, accountable, and so that you all are recognizing the strength of each other's collaborative backgrounds and skills. So let's talk about challenges. Well, if you have a too great diversity of membership, people may not be able to understand each other easily. If you have a lot of people with very deep knowledge in different areas who have not worked much with each other, integrating that deep knowledge can be a challenge. A large size of a team can be a challenge because it's hard to make sure that all voices are heard. There might be a goal misalignment. There might be teams working, unfortunately, against each other in some way, and you're competing. There might be some permeable team and group boundaries in which the different members of the teams or groups move in and out a little bit too much. And so you can't depend on X professor or X researcher to be there every single time for X particular group. There might be a geographic dispersion that might be a problem for some institutions that are low resourced. And there might be high task interdependence so that the later tasks depend on the earlier ones for their success. And sometimes that means that if the earlier one is not successful, then the later ones will not be either. So you need to identify these kinds of challenges and address them as necessary. Also, keeping everyone engaged, on point, pulling together toward the goals, keeping all the programming or all the core work aligned with project vision and requirements. Maintaining timelines can be difficult. We all, life happens. We're all busy people. Obtaining institutional or departmental data can be challenging. Sometimes people say, why do you want that? What's going on? And sometimes you have to find exactly the right person and the right combination of persuasiveness and questions to unlock the access to specific kinds of data. And then, of course, there might be turf battles. There might be pushback from other programs. No, we're doing this. You don't need to do this. Stay in your lane. I'm sure you've heard that before. I certainly have. There's also budget creep, in which people on the team decide that they need something more for themselves than for the good of the team. There might be some personality management that needs to happen with different size egos, for example. When team members fail to deliver for whatever reason, there might be the need to fill a gap in the work. There might need to be document management, version control, those kinds of things. Those are all challenges as well in terms of the practicalities of the work. So what does actually work? Psychological safety, dependable team members. This is a safe space that has clear roles, clearly defined structures. We have together agreed upon meaningful goals, and we have made everyone understand that their collaborating in this improves their ability to make an impact in some way that's meaningful to them. Also, another set of tips for effective sustainable collaborations, you'd want to think about the practicalities, intellectual property, funded and unfunded effort and sharing and publishing data and participation in collaborative grant proposals, how you're actually going to do this, the logistics and the practicality of how to do the work together. So yes, number two, yes, you probably need to talk about who gets the intellectual property and bring in the people who are over intellectual property and sharing and protecting intellectual property at your institution and at the other institutions represented around the table so that you can all agree on that, for example. A third set of tips for effective and sustainable collaborations is to, yes, develop a written collaboration agreement, a memorandum of understanding or some other kind of teaming agreement, and your sponsor programs office and or your person who represents intellectual property protection on campus might have those as templates for you so that you can all sign that says, this is what we want to achieve. These are our individual responsibilities. This is where the data will be kept. This is who will be able to access it under what conditions. This is who will own the intellectual property and determine authorship. This is how we will communicate with each other, and this is our timeline. And you'd want to update that frequently and make sure that everyone is on board with that timeline, the way in which you're together going after funding and interesting, intellectually challenging investigations. The fourth set of tips, fourth and final, is how to be a good collaborator yourself. You want to communicate often, including if things aren't going well. To be frank, tactful, but frank about how things are not going well, if they're not going well, and come with ideas about how to put things back on track. Review your agreement, your actual written agreement that we talked about. Continually assess whether things are working. Publish. That's the coin of the realm for academics. Be persistent in pursuing funding. You would want to acknowledge contributions of other folks around the table and conclude collaborations that aren't working amicably or in a friendly manner, because you might have to work with these folks together in the future, especially if they are at your institution. Key takeaways: you would want to make sure that collaborations, which are an essential part of successful grant seeking for most current kinds of funding opportunities, that collaborations are used only when the work demands it and only when you have the right team. You would want to use your resources to find new collaborators and deepen the relationship with existing ones. You want to anticipate any challenges from the very beginning and make sure that you define each person's role on the team and convey those roles and responsibilities in each proposal, as well as, of course, in the teaming agreement or in the memorandum of understanding. And you would want to, of course, leverage your resources. Here are some resources for collaboration and team science. These links will be live when you receive these slides after this presentation. And now some 3 slides for Chris Gray, our content director from Hanover, a colleague, to talk about in terms of additional resources.
Yeah, so before moving into Q&A, we just wanted to highlight some resources that Hanover provides that are always on and available to faculty at UTD. So this first slide here provides an overview of Hanover's Grants Learning Center. This is an on-demand training resource that we launched a couple years ago. It provides self-paced interactive modules for faculty to learn about and develop proposals for specific competitions. So right now we have modules developed around NSF Career as well as NIH R mechanisms. I'll add that before the end of the year, we plan to launch a new set of modules that are focused on standard grants topics, so things such as concept development, prospecting research, developing competitive proposals. Then on the next slide, we talk about our grants newsletters, funding calendars, and digests that we put out on a regular basis. So with the grant alerts and digests, these go out on a weekly and monthly basis and provide an overview of upcoming grant opportunities, both in the research and programmatic spaces. We also focus on both healthcare and generally higher education topics. With funding calendars, these are bi-monthly emails that we send out, and they get more specific into specific topics and disciplines. So you'll see the bullets on the bottom of the screen show the specific topics that we tend to cover. Just this week, we released the latest funding calendar, which was focused on opportunities related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So with that, we're happy to dive into Q&A.
All right, thank you guys so much. We do have one question. The question says, about what should the ratio of a team be in terms of ranking? Like assistant professors, how many professors, associate professors, full professors?
There's a joke in my field that every answer is it depends. But I have to say that now because it does depend. It depends on the kind of collaboration that you want. It depends on how people are moving forward. Some people are very comfortable with a very take charge, hierarchically head of the table kind of person, and they're very comfortable coming along with the ride. Other people very much wanted to be rather horizontal versus vertical in terms of the hierarchy, and everyone being very collaborative in terms of building consensus and moving forward as a group. So when you think about what kind of collaboration you want this to be, think about whether people do in fact show their rank all the time by putting up their peacock feathers and saying, I am a this. In some cases, that's very useful. That's very worthwhile. They are the leader, and it is a good thing for the rest to be followers because they're a good leader and a good mentor. In other cases, you're going to want to make the the case that everyone around the table needs to have a voice. Everyone around the table needs to have some leadership opportunities. Everyone around the table needs to be respected very well for what they bring, and that they each together collaboratively working together lead everyone toward a consensus goal or set of goals and projects. So I don't have a recommendation, unfortunately. I don't have a recommendation on the proportion of ranks, but I do have a recommendation that you ask yourselves, what kind of collaborative team, what kind of collaborative group do we want, and assess and combine and gather people together accordingly.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer, Paul. And I cannot thank you guys enough once again for joining us today. Chris and Paul, we appreciate both of you for sharing your expertise. Audience, we thank you for joining us as well. For more information on upcoming Office of Research and Innovation programs, please follow us on social media and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. This information and a polite request to complete a survey about today's program can be found in the chat. Feel free to use the QR codes to join our social media and to fill out that survey. We definitely value your feedback, and we thank you for your time. Have a wonderful afternoon.